This podcast is powered by the pros at Paschal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPaschal.com.
We go to Brett Dolan on the McClarty Daniel hotline, and speaking of softballers, he's got one that I'm sure you wouldn't mind bragging about too, Brett, right?
Well, I do love my softball. I love the yellow ball in addition to the smaller white one. So, the springs are always a little bit chaotic when you're kind of jumping back and forth between all the baseball and softball seasons.
Yeah, didn't your daughter though? She's been recognized as one of the top players in her region. I know sometimes we've talked to you while you've been at the softball field.
Yeah, I think I've even made you watching it batter too on the iPad. Yeah, she was her district MVP, so I'm proud of her. She played at the same high school that Kevin Copps did, so it's a pretty high level. And in Houston, there's a neighboring district that's 5A, we're 6A, and their best player will be here at Arkansas next year. She's that good, and Kate will be in D2 in Topeka, Kansas at Washburn. But she's had a good run, so I get to jump into the summer season here pretty soon and start following her around the country when I can.
You just mentioned about the yellow ball. Did you see so everyone's, not everyone, you got the Savannah Bananas that have created a whole new thing about baseball, and there's another, I think it's a college summer wooden bat league team that is making a new way to play baseball in the dark, with like glowing uniforms, glowing bats, and a glowing ball. I've seen, I guess I'd call it a trailer of what a game like that would look like. I've also seen baseball played with tennis balls and tennis rackets. So there's a lot of new versions of the game played. I just wouldn't imagine you can play it in the dark.
Sounds rather Bill Vecchian right there.
It does.
Summer League. I got my son going out to the Appy League for an internship to work there. I don't think they're doing it because they're MLB affiliated, but maybe I'll have to pay a little attention to who's trying this out.
How old did you feel? I saw you tweet about this recently. It was 25 years to the day of Kerry Wood's famous 20 strikeout game against the Houston Astros. Now, you know what that means? That means it's 25 years to the day to when I was sitting in Milwaukee County Stadium watching Tony Gwynn hit a ninth-inning home run to force extra innings, but the Brewers won. I was at the Cubs game the night before Kerry Wood struck out 20. Ooh. I missed that by one game, but I didn't even realize. Did you call was it a double-A debut or a triple-A debut?
Yeah, it was triple-A. I think it was 26 years ago. It was 1998, so that was my first year working with the Iowa Cubs in triple-A. Our opening day starter was Kerry Wood, and we knew we weren't going to keep him around very often, but he had one start, 5 innings, 11 Ks. He goes up. I think he pitched against Montreal or whatnot. I actually went to see him make his first start at Wrigley, I think, and then a week after that, he had the 20 strikeout performance, maybe one of the greatest pitch performances, even though it wasn't a no-hitter in baseball history. And then when you kind of reflect back and you think, 26 years? Really? I mean, I guess it feels like a long time ago. I mean, he has kids now that I'm calling some of their baseball events through Perfect Game and whatnot that are 17, 18 years old. But, boy, time flies. 2.5 decades can go by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, no kidding. How many games are you on the call for Arkansas, Mississippi State this weekend?
We've got 2, so we had a chance to visit with Chris Lemonis today and kind of get ready for this series. I'm excited to have the first 2 Friday and Saturday. I will say, Phil, you and I are both media members, but we enjoy when the teams do well. We understand the fan base. If I was strictly a fan, I'd probably be a little bit anxious. I feel like State's playing really good baseball as of late.
Yeah, no, Kev. They announced what did Lemonis say anything about what their rotation looks like? Because, I think they've been pretty steady as far as Carl Steven and Gerangelo Saincha, but they've started Brooks Auger or Evan Cieri more in the SEC in the third game. Did they tell you anything about that?
Yeah, he said still TBA. Auger's a candidate. He's pitched well. And their pitching staff, much like Arkansas, has been really good. And their Friday and Saturday pitchers have been outstanding. Now, he does have Nate Dome, who's kind of his Friday guy who's been hurt, that he might throw for a couple of innings. And maybe that's Sunday as a start. Maybe that's in relief. He also has last year's number 2 starter who went through Tommy John that's available in relief as well. So, it's also, Phil, not just a team that pitches well, but this is where it feels like a lot similar to Arkansas. They defend extremely well. Their defensive numbers are good. It's kind of been the one consistent aspect of their team. To me, it feels like Arkansas, of course, has been pitching and defense as well. Both of these teams are similar programs, and Dave went over this today when I was able to jump on his conference call. Is it pressure versus expectation, and how do you handle it when the fans expect you to win and win big, and when you lose, the sky's falling? State goes through that same thing, and they're really fighting to host, where Arkansas is trying to stay in that national seed conversation, if not lock it up, and then maybe win an SEC regular season championship or a West. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend.
Where these teams really do differ. Now, the pitching staffs, there's a lot of similarity there. Offensively, Mississippi State is not like the most powerful team. The Hogs have hit more home runs than they have, but they have a couple of guys that are consistent run producers. Thinking of Dakota Jordan and Hunter Hines. Jordan's the right fielder. Hines is the first baseman. Both are hitting for power. Both are driving in runs on a consistent basis. And that's a clutch hitting team. Like, they've got the highest average with runners in scoring position in the league, while the Hogs are on the bottom. I mean, the very bottom of that very important number in SEC games. And you're still looking for somebody to be a consistent run producer. Like, I think the team, what Arkansas doesn't struggle at, it's not a matter of getting men on base. It's bringing them home. They get guys on base. They just leave a lot of them on base.
They do, and I feel like when I cover Arkansas softball team and baseball team, there's so many similarities, and where the similarities come is pitching and defense and getting people on base, not necessarily scoring to the level we would think. And I think that both softball and baseball, and this is more of a baseball conversation, you still need to hit home runs. And I know when you get to a regional and you don't homer and you lose, everybody says, it can't be a team that relies on home runs. But what's the easiest way to freaking score? It's hit the ball over the other side of the fence. This team has not done it to the level I thought they would. Now, Diggs hasn't been quite healthy, and there's been some other issues, and there's hitters like McLaughlin and Stovall that are good hitters, but maybe not power hitters. A couple of 3-run homers certainly wouldn't hurt as far as affecting a few of those numbers, and maybe this is the week, although, again, a very good pitching staff. And you're right, though, Phil. I think you start talking about whether it's clutch hitting or leaving runners on base or whatnot. Part of the conversation for Arkansas this year has been looking at the games they've lost, where it's been 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position. For a series, it's 5 for 35 or whatnot. Sometimes that becomes just kind of a block, too, where, you're aware of it. Everybody's trying to get the key hit and change that dynamic or that narrative. But that's obviously a concern because they aren't homering enough to overcome some of that.
Any surprise that Mason Molina is staying in the rotation for this weekend instead of Gage Wood moving into the rotation? And why do you think that they're keeping it identical from what it's been almost the entire season?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise. I think the one thing Dave used, and he was a man of few words, he just said they're healthy, they're ready, they're ready to go, they're feeling good, I'm not going to make a change. I think that he's still – the fun part about Dave, and this is where it's both relating to young kids and also being a 30, 40-year veteran, is the ability to motivate. And sometimes you got to motivate a little bit by fear, like you're going to lose your job, or, he's not afraid to change lineups or tell guys he's going to start the toughest guy for the second game of a doubleheader, whatever it is, to push the right buttons. And I felt like he was starting to push a little bit, maybe for Mason or even Brady. And obviously you want that rotation to be good, because if you aren't hitting at quite the level you want and your pitching's not as good as it was a month ago, that's a little reason for concern. So I'm a little bit maybe surprised, but it doesn't mean that we won't see Gage Wood, I would say, for 3 or 4 innings in some key situations, whether that's Saturday or Sunday, whether it's in the 3rd or 4th inning or whether it's in the 6th, and maybe trying to finish a game.
It's an important series for many reasons, against Mississippi State, and it's like independent of the standings. It's the last time they're playing at home until a regional. Going on the road to A&M, that's going to be really difficult. And whatever happens in the SEC tournament has no bearing on what happens after that. None whatsoever. We've seen so much proof that anything that happens in Hoover, whether bad or good, doesn't carry over. It's almost like limbo, or purgatory, waiting for what's next. You got to play well at home, especially the fact that they have played so well at home this year. It's just, I think this is the best team that's coming into Baum Walker to play them. I think the best team they've played this year is Kentucky. You could say South Carolina or Alabama too, are teams that have played at a high level at a point this year. There haven't really been very good SEC teams that have come in to Baum Walker, at least record-wise. This is the best one that's coming in.
You're right. And maybe at the beginning of the year, I think even national television did the same thing. There's games against LSU and Ole Miss that probably weren't the biggest games of the week. They anticipated them being so, and LSU and Ole Miss and others haven't necessarily lived up to their billing. And all of a sudden, here comes State. Maybe we gave up on them early in the year, and here they are. And I think you're 1,000% right. This is the best team coming into Baum Walker this year. And next week with A&M, listen, I mean, I think even Dave said they are the most complete. They might be the best team in the SEC right now. So, you know, Dave and his staff talk about the race to 15 wins, which they feels like gets them into a regional without any questions asked. To me, it's kind of a race to 19 or 20 wins now so that you lock up a national seed and you take care of business. And, boy, 2 wins this weekend would be great because then next weekend doesn't become quite as imperative to being a top 8. And as you mentioned, the conference tournament, I think, is fairly irrelevant as far as that goes.
Well, and it's also that, I mean, just look at the D1 baseball projections. They've got Arkansas and Mississippi State regionals matched up against each other. Like, so A&M, Kentucky, those are teams you wouldn't play until the College World Series. Mississippi State, you might see them the second week of the postseason.
It feels like South Carolina a few years ago. Maybe it's been more than a few now. But, you know, there's so many SEC teams that want to be in the top 16 or whatever that you're going to eventually line up with SEC teams. And I think it was Kentucky last year. Weren't they at LSU for a Super? So
yep.
there could easily be a scenario where you face an SEC team in the Super Regional. My goodness, would you love to have that at home? I would love it to be anybody else other than an SEC team. But yeah, you're right. You're kind of playing for positioning, not just to bolster your case, but to kind of push some of the SEC teams away from you and away from that top 16.
All right, let's end on something that we got into earlier this week, the idea of beefs, you know, with Drake and with – you were familiar with the Drake-Kendrick Lamar beef? Are you following any of this?
A little bit. Help me out.
They don't like each other. Let's just leave it at that. But we brought up sports beefs, and I couldn't help but just a moment ago think about one of the all-time great beefs, and it's not on the field. It's in the booth, and I think we might have brought this up on the show when you've come on before. It's with a former colleague of yours, and you might even call him a mentor too, in Milo Hamilton, longtime voice of the Astros, and Harry Carey. Now, I think they had a beef that lasted probably into the afterlife.
Yes, it might still be going. The funny part was, you know, there was a time when they were both working for the Cubs, and one would be on radio and one would be on TV at the same time. It would be like if we disliked each other and we switched in the fourth innings, but we'd have to walk down that hallway in the fourth inning and pass each other. You know, maybe we'd elbow each other and nudge or ignore or grunt or whatever the case may be. It's fascinating to think that, you know, you could have people that work so closely together that really don't care for each other. But you know our profession, Phil, the egos are big, and we come from an era where there's a lot of people calling games, but back then there was kind of like one big voice for every team, and they were competitive even when they weren't playing against each other.
Brad, I appreciate your time, man. Always fun talking to you. We'll see you at Baum tomorrow. Thank you.
You know it.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.